Hey, today I'm going to give you 5 tips for using on-camera flash. Now, these aren't obviously the only 5 tips that one would be able to give to someone, but these are 5 that I came up with that I think are pretty important. Maybe a couple of them no-brainers. But let's go ahead and just get going and start with tip number 1. Use TTL. That means ETTL for Canon, iTTL for Nikon. Basically the same thing. The idea is your flash is controlled automatically, it's metered kind of in real time. You don't have to worry about adjusting the flash power yourself. You don't adjust the flash power manually because you're allowing the camera and the flash to work together to adjust the flash power automatically as you shoot. So whether you're shooting in manual mode, aperture priority, or program mode, use TTL. Let your camera and flash worry about the flash power. You worry about the other things. Now, I'll give you a couple of reasons why you might want to do this. Now, you're using your flash on your camera, right? So the distances between your flash and camera, because they're connected to your subject, the distances between this and your subject are going to change, and really even slight distances, slight changes in distance like this could really affect the exposure, the flash exposure on your subject. So you're not going to want to just keep fiddling with the flash power for every little change in distance. I mean, you might move, your subject might move, and if you're shooting an event, you're moving all the time. Who has time to sit there and recalculate every single shot you're going to do? No, you owe it to yourself and to your clients, whoever's paying you to shoot that event. You owe it to them to just do the work the best you can. That means having your flash automatically controlled. You worry about focusing and I don't know, shutter speed if you're working with ambient light and things like that. You worry about the other stuff, let the flash take care of itself. Now, the other thing is, even if you're shooting more static subjects, you might think about this. You're not always going to use your flash in this orientation. You might want to bounce your flash off a wall or something like that. Maybe the wall behind you or off a side wall, something like that. We're talking about interior flash use. So if you're doing that, you're not going to want to calculate each of those changes in flash distances, because if you're using your flash like this, even if everything is basically static, in other words, even if you and your subject are basically going to maintain the same distances to each other, if you decide, hey, let's try something different and let's get a bigger light to give you a little bit less contrasty look, you do this. Now the distances have changed, especially where the flash is concerned. Now your flash is going this way, up towards the wall and ceiling, and then back down towards your subject. And that's a big change in distance from the original light source to your subject, even though you and your subject haven't moved. So you're going to want TTL to control your flash output. And I know there are a lot of purists out there. I don't know, what did these guys just get out of their first photography class, and their teacher said, oh, you've got to do everything in manual, including your flash. That doesn't always apply, and it doesn't always make sense. You have your flash on your camera, pretty much just use it in TTL mode. All right, and since we just mentioned bouncing the flash, here's tip number 2. You know those plastic flash diffusers that you could put on there, like the light sphere and the omni bounce, things like that? Now those things can be pretty handy indoors. Outdoors, not so much. I've seen even really good photographers just have those things placed on their flashes outdoors. Not very smart. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, not very useful. Because you're wasting a lot of flash power. The flash is pointed in the wrong direction. It's not pointed at the subject. And let me tell you something, the light sphere, the omni bounce, things like that, those things, the way that they soften your lighting, it's not that the light from the flash is magically becoming softer. What's happening is those diffusers actually help direct a lot of the light in to different parts of the room. So they'll bounce off of walls and ceilings and bounce back towards your subject at different angles, filling in the shadows a little bit, and that gives you the look of softer light. It's not the plastic itself that's making the light softer, especially the light that's hitting the subject directly. So basically, if you're outdoors and you've got your flash positioned this way and you've got one of those pieces of plastic sitting on top of it, you're wasting a lot of light because the light that's headed off in those other directions is not coming back. It's not bouncing back. There are no walls, there are no ceilings for the light to bounce back onto your subject. So the subject is basically getting a little bit of a bigger light source coming off the flash than this. It's pointed up. It's probably going to be about this big. So they've got a little larger light source, but it's a lot weaker. At any distance, that difference in the size of the light source is going to be pretty insignificant. So again, don't use those things outdoors. It doesn't make any sense. Quick tip number 3, HighSpeed Sync. All right. HighSpeed Sync, and I'm not going to go into the details right now about why HighSpeed Sync is necessary sometimes, but you know, depending on your camera, when you're using normal flash, it might be able to use flash and shutter speeds as high as maybe 1/250th of a second. Maybe some cameras can go as fast as 1/500th of a second and still use flash. I don't know, I think that's probably kind of rare. So they all have sort of an upper limit as far as shutter speeds go, but there are times when you might need to use much faster shutter speeds, like outdoors, and you might want to open up the aperture real wide to get that nice shallow depth of field for portraits, things like that. And you find that, wow, I'm using shutter speeds of maybe 4,000th of a second, or even, you know, all the way up to the camera's limit, like 1/8,000th of a second, something like that. If that's happening, you can't use your flash, say for fill flash, in the normal way, because there are mechanical reasons about how the shutter works. The flash is just not going to work under those circumstances. So you use something called HighSpeed Sync. I think with Canon flashes, it actually uses the icon H or something like that. With Nikon, it's called FP, but it's really HighSpeed Sync for your flash. And if you just make sure that your flash has HighSpeed Sync activated, only when it's necessary will that automatically kick in. And if you're shooting at a speed higher than your camera's normal flash sync speed, the flash will operate in a different way, slightly weaker, but the duration of the flash will last longer. It kind of works like a very fast pulsing strobe light, so that your flash is on for a duration that covers whatever it is that your shutter's doing. So you'll get pretty much a normal flash exposure that way. Use HighSpeed Sync. That's tip number 3. All right, tip number 4. Why don't you get yourself one of these? This is really cool. This is a dedicated flash sync cord, okay? And really what it does is, you know, your camera's hot shoe and your flash, if you're using a dedicated flash, you know, flash that's compatible with your camera. The hot shoe on your camera has all these connections on it, so that the camera and the flash can talk to each other in their native language, right? So that the camera can control the flash and use all of its features, especially TTL. So with a flash sync, with a dedicated flash sync like this one's made for Canon specifically, you can put this on your camera's hot shoe, put your flash on the other end, and now you've got some distance flash from camera. So it's not technically on the camera at this point, but it's close enough, right? And you've still got all the functionality of TTL without using radio control or something like that. Now, you know how we were talking about using flash in sort of the bounce orientation? Well, some flashes, like if you've got like a 270 EX2 or a SB300, now those flash units, they'll do this, right? So you can bounce stuff off the ceiling, but what they won't do is this. So you can't really turn your flash all the way around behind you like this, which is really important for some types of shooting. You can't bounce it off a sidewall like this. You have limited motion with your flash, but you get that flash off of there with that sync cord. You can point your flash anywhere. You have it on TTL, the TTL still works for you, problem solved. Now, one of those sync cords is also really fun to use if you're doing like really close-up work, macro photography, things like that. Just, you know, you just have this flash like this. I'd recommend getting one of those cheap little mini soft boxes that fits on the flash. I've got some videos where I show exactly how I do that, and just, you know, shoot like this. So yeah, get yourself one of these cool things. Not very expensive. They come in handy. Not going to use them all the time, nice to have. All right, here's tip number 5, and this is one of those no-brainers I was talking about. Use rechargeable batteries. Now, I've had great experiences with both Eneloop and Energizer rechargeables. They both work just fine. Get the best ones you can afford. I will have a link down in the description for some of those batteries and a really great charger. I use the Watson 8-bay rapid charger. It's never failed, works really great, charges those batteries up really fast. What's cool is with rechargeables, I guess you're doing something that's eco-friendly, so it's good for the environment if you're into that. Also, you'll probably save money over time, especially if you use your flashes and burn up those batteries as much as I do. Rechargeables will end up saving you money in the long run, even though they're kind of expensive, on the front end. You'll save money, and I can tell you they tend to give me a lot of power per charge. So I suspect that I'm getting a lot more out of those rechargeables per charge than I would out of a fresh set of non-rechargeable batteries. Hey, so those are my 5 quick tips for on-camera flash. I've got to get some work done. I hope you found those tips useful. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up by clicking that like button. If you haven't already, go ahead and click subscribe. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.